Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, at this time, you can go ahead and take a moment to get your coffee ready if you need to, or a beverage. Today, I am drinking Gatorade. Oh, you can't really see that. I'm drinking Gatorade. Had to go with a different choice today. Hope everyone's doing well. Hi there, Dr. Ellis. Hope you're doing well. And I'm going to wait just a moment or two, maybe 2 minutes, to let some come in the room. And then I'll go ahead and get started. And then as people join, I'll just let them in as we continue. I want to make sure I'm honoring everyone's time. And I have received some messages that some are trying to come in. So hopefully they'll join in just a moment. But again, at this time, you can take a moment to get coffee or tea or juice or Gatorade, whatever you need. And we're going to go ahead and get started in just a few moments. And if you can just give me a thumbs up if you can hear me well. Okay, awesome. All right, and we're going to go ahead and begin in about 30 seconds. And again, as if other people join in, I'll just make sure or be sure to add them in and admit them because I do want to honor your time and make sure that we're respectful. I know you all have a lot of things to do and it's a busy day. I know there's a lot of principal meetings going on and a lot of just sessions and board meetings. So I know the days are busy. So again, we will start in just a moment. And if others join in, we'll continue to let them in. All right. All righty. So let's go ahead and get started. All right. So welcome to Kloud-12 Coffee Chat for District Leadership. This is instructional coaching cycles that work. Okay. All right, a little bit about myself again. I have over 16 years in education before officially joining the Kloud-12 team. Served as a teacher, department chair, building administrator, district administrator, as well as state Department of Education committees. I've had 3 years as a Kloud-12 customer. Very excited with that. We expanded, from an initial deployment to a district-wide implementation, and that has been such a great journey. And I'm also glad that I get to continue working with the district that I left recently. So that's awesome. All right, again, I'm Emmanuel Reddish and I'm a customer engagement manager. And this here is just a slide of our amazing team. I have Kelly Martinez, who's our director of customer success, who's also on this call. I have Caitlin Day, who is our wonderful customer success specialist, who's also on this call as well. Jamie Ulmer, who is our customer success operations specialist. And actually, kudos to her. She actually did my graphics and design on this presentation. So that has been so exciting. And then I also have Roxanne Bitterman, our customer success specialist as well. So this is our wonderful team, and we're always here ready to support you in any kind of way possible. All right, so take a moment to tell me a little bit about yourself. You can take a moment to just type the following in the chat space: your first and last name, role in the district, district school name, city name, location, and then optional, what do you hope to gain from today's session? And I'll pause just a moment for that. And I actually know everyone on this call right now, so I'm gonna give a shout out to Callaway Elementary School that is on here, and other friends from Troop. So it's awesome. And then I'm just gonna continue right on trucking because I want us to make sure that we're getting quality of time in what we're learning today, okay? So starting off our objectives for today's meeting, we're gonna first discuss what is instructional coaching. Then we'll move right into the 3 approaches of coaching, the impact cycle, Kloud-12 action steps, and then listening and questioning effectively. And then we'll end with questions and brief discussion. Also, I have a setting right now, just so you all know, that has everyone on mute, just so there's no feedback and things like that. But once we get to the discussion and chatting parts, I will, of course, remove that setting so that everyone can freely have those conversations. All right, so reflection time. If you want to take a moment, you can just type in the chat box there. Take a moment now in the chat to just type where you and your school or district are in regards to instructional coaching. So for example, it may be non-existent, like you may not have any instructional coaching going on. And I want to be very clear, an instructional coach isn't just the title of a role. So a principal can serve as an instructional coach. An assistant principal can serve as an instructional coach. Another teacher can serve in that capacity, but typically we do have a designated role for that. But I just want to let you know that when I say non-existent, it does not mean that you have to have a role specifically geared to an instructional coach. But is that happening in your school? So do you have instructional coaching going on? Do you have the beginning stages of that? Is it non-existent, or is it like Gym Night Academy? Do you have just the top tier instructional coaching going on that is just moving and shaking in your school or district? Okay. I'll give you a moment. Type that. Okay. All right, so I have comment here. We're currently working with veteran and new teachers on best practices. The principal, assistant principal, teacher on special assignment, which is the TOSA, and literacy facilitator are all working with assigned grade levels on data review and instructional planning. That is awesome. And we're in the working stage, not new, but not arrived. I love that. Okay. So it's kind of in that middle range. And I think that's an awesome place to be in because, no matter where you are, whether you're beginning or your expertise or whatever, I think it's always great to learn something new. You learn something new every single day. And that's always very, very important. So I love that you're just in that working stage and really moving along, but you're at a space where you can really grow and make some changes in your district and building. And that brings me to this quote here that from Peter Singe, that real learning gets to the heart of what it means to be human. Through learning, we recreate ourselves. Through learning, we become able to do something that we were never able to do. Through learning, we reperceive the world and our relationship to it. And through learning, we extend our capacity to create, to be part of the generative process of life. There is within each of us a deep hunger for this type of learning. And that really sets the stage for our conversation today, that instructional coaching is all about learning. It's learning for that coach that's helping to guide those teachers, and it's of course, learning for the teacher. So you're really learning, they're growing, and it's helping the students to learn and gain new knowledge. You can't go into anything like with this mindset that you have everything together. You have to have a growth mindset. You have to have a mindset that's able to receive new information, and that is a trial and error. That is what instructional coaching is all about. And today I'm going to try to give you some tips and guidelines from Jim Knight and other people to help you guide your process, because these are cycles that are research proven and that work. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples that do work. They work really well. They may not be the best way, but then we're going to show you the ultimate best methods for instructional coaching as well. And let's jump right in. So what is instructional coaching? Okay. Instructional coaching. Oh, I love this quote. That's awesome. This is an awesome quote. Thank you, Kelly. Instructional coaching is collaborating with teachers so they can choose and implement research-based interventions to help students learn more effectively. So you're collaborating with teachers and making sure that you're using research-based interventions. If you were on a couple of weeks ago through the PLC process that we were starting, we talked about being research-based and action-based. Everything really ties together. We're beyond those days of just throwing anything at students or throwing anything at teachers and hoping something sticks. We want to be very strategic, and we want to make sure that it is research-based and that we're truly starting a conversation and collaboration with our peers. A positive culture must be established for the instructional coaching relationship between the coach and teachers. So this is both within the schools and within the district, working among various schools. An effective setup will prove to be most beneficial for the long haul of any coaching model. So in order for you to have success, and to make sure that that has longevity, you want to make sure that it is effectively set up from the beginning, making sure that you have structures in place, making sure you have checklists in place. And I'll talk more about checklists as we move forward, but making sure that you have a strategic, academically proven, research-based, evidence-based process that is going to set you up for success. And so it takes time. Sometimes we jump right into things. It's okay to take that time and think about it, process it, work with your teams, really collaborate so that you are sure that you're going to have an effective instructional coaching process. Move on. Instructional coaches, they work with teachers to help them incorporate research-based instructional practices. So when you're an instructional coach, you have to have a lot of strategies and suggestions in your back pocket. For example, when I was teaching, think, pair, share comes to mind, cooperative learning comes to mind, PAL, study and literacy, which is that peers assisted learning strategies. You have exit tickets at 1, 2, 3 or 3, 2, 1. You also have the flipped classroom, which is also a great model. My absolute personal favorite strategy was Socratic seminar. But one thing I learned as a teacher is that one strategy may work effectively, like absolutely well for one classroom. It is not going to work the same way for every classroom. And I had one year where we were doing Socratic seminar, kids were talking and discussing. We had guests from everywhere, people from the state, the district, other schools coming into my classroom. We would set chairs up and they were just learning, and my students were just top tier. The next year, I tried to do the exact same thing because I had saw so much success with all of those classes. When I started that next year, crickets. I could hear a pin drop because none of the students wanted to talk. They're very shy. And so I was like, oh, this is scary. But because I knew there were different strategies, such as discussion cafes or those other processes that I talked about, like exit tickets and doing a lot of activating strategy activities, those different things work for them. But I had to do trial and error. But it wasn't just random things that I did. I always went to the internet. I always went to Barnes and Noble, and did a lot of research and reading and book study and talking with experienced teachers and talking with new teachers because I want to get those research-based instructional practices. Instructional coaches must be skilled at unpacking their cooperating or collaborating teachers' goals so that they can help them create a plan for realizing their own professional goals. They must have a repertoire of excellent communication skills and be able to empathize, listen, and build relationships and trust. You must be highly skilled at facilitating teachers' reflection as well about your classroom practices. And you have to know a large number, as I said before, of scientifically evidence-based proven instructional practices that might address classroom management. They may also address content enhancement, specific teaching practices, such as it may be a numerical strategy or something that's for literacy, like with dealing with phonemic or phonological awareness. It also may be for formative assessment. So like I was saying with those exit tickets or cold calling, just randomly calling on students in a strategic manner, those are different things that you have to have in your bag of tricks in a sense, so you can be successful as that instructional coach. And again, if you have comments or anything throughout, just type them in and I'll address those. And if I need to let you speak or whatever, I can do that as well. So we're going to continue on. Let's talk about the 3 approaches to coaching. So there are 3 specific approaches to coaching that stand out through research. There are different methods, but these are the top 3 in the nation and worldwide that people talk about and know when they mention coaching. So the first one is facilitate coaching. A metaphor for this would be the sounding board. So when you're participating in facilitate coaching, you are really listening to the teacher. As the coach, you're really listening to that teacher. It is based off equity, okay? Equality. So you're at an equal position. They don't know more than you necessarily, and you don't know more than them. It's an equal relationship there. But your sole purpose is to really let the teacher talk and you just listen. You need to encourage them to share their ideas openly. You have to refrain or pause yourself from sharing your own expertise and suggestions with respect to what a teacher can do to get better. So you want to make sure that you're really just listening, being that sounding board, allowing them to talk and just being like, okay, okay. Okay, or saying, I hear you said such and such. Okay, continue. It can be used in all types of situations, so it has the potential to address issues that other 2 models are not able to address. This model, truthfully, is one where you're just really listening, and it allows the teacher to be able to express him or herself, and because when you talk, you can listen to yourself talk, you hear your ideas come to life. You hear what sounds crazy, when you speak it aloud. That's what this is. It's really just letting the teacher speak and you refraining from offering your suggestions, but just listening to them and let them talk, okay? You may repeat what they say, but you never really offer any suggestions or anything of that nature. Just listening. That next method is what is called directive coaching. Directive coaching also works, but this relationship is a lot different. So with directive coaching, the coach is really the expertise, it's the expert, and they really know everything. And they're trying to get the teacher who may be novice or someone who needs to learn a lot of things, they're trying to get them across the finish line or getting them to meet certain goals. So in this relationship, the metaphor is known as the master, which is that instructional coach, and the apprentice. So obviously this relationship is respectful, but it's not equal because you have those different levels there, that instructional coach and that teacher there. So this coach has the special knowledge, they know all their skills, they've taught for years perhaps, they have a whole repertoire of different communication skills and strategies and all that within their bag, and their job is now to transfer that knowledge to the teacher. This may be a good strategy if you have a new teacher, but the only downfall with that is that that new teacher doesn't really get to offer up their ideas and suggestions. They're really just a sponge, soaking up everything that that instructional coach is giving to them. And you work from the assumption, sorry, that the teachers that you're coaching, they don't know how to use those best practices of instruction. They don't have that repertoire of research-based practices. That's the first 2, remember? But then the third one, which we're going to talk a lot about, and this is the strategy that Jim Knight and the Instructional Coaching Group uses. Most successful coaches across the country use this strategy because it kind of is a little bit of both. But it's just a very strategic plan of coaching, and it has a lot of different steps with it that are very well thought out, strategically based. So in this, the metaphor in dialogical coaching is the partner, right? We're sitting here together. The relationship is equal. We're working together. So these coaches balance advocacy with inquiry. So they're advocating for the person's success. The coach is advocating for that teacher's success, but they're also doing it in a questioning mindset, right? They're doing it in a way that is asking a lot of questions, listening to the responses, clarifying, and then coming back with another suggestion perhaps, or some more clarification that they may need. They share strategies and options for improvement provisionally, and they help the teachers describe precisely both what they want to achieve and how to get there. They go beyond mere conversation to dialogue, right? So this is a give and take. I'm speaking and listening, and you're speaking and listening. That's what's happening here. It's strong dialogue that's happening where thinking is done together, and neither the teacher nor the coach is expected to withhold their ideas. So it's an equal playing ground. And this is the same thing that I used to be. Side note, when my very first job, I was a courtesy clerk, and I thought I was going to be standing at the front of a grocery store greeting people like, hello, like you say, welcome to Walmart. And it was a grocery store. And I was like, welcome to Food Max. Until I realized, no, I was the buggy boy. And so I had to go out there and get buggies and all of that. And that was fun. It was a different experience, pulling trash and cleaning restrooms. And I remember my uncle telling me, you need to clean your restroom the best way you can. And so anyway, with that, I grew and I got promoted and things of that nature. And I became a cashier. Then I became a customer service attendant. Then I became the customer service manager. Then I became the cash office manager. And at my final stage at that store, I was in charge. Every bit of money that came through that store, and I mean thousands upon thousands of dollars, every bit of it had to go through my approval. I was sending through the computers. I was working with Wells Fargo, doing all these things. My point behind that brief little story there is that for me, because of my experiences, I had started doing buggies and trash and all that. And because I worked in different positions, I had an understanding of where every employee was. So I never came at my job in this hierarchy role where I was always pushing down on people. I always tried to treat people as a partner and talk with them and coach them along. I would listen to them, offer suggestions. Now, of course, there are certain things that had to be done, but I would do it in a way that was really dialogical, very high conversation based, a lot of thinking. I would say stuff, and side note as well, it was kind of funny. I would, when I would catch someone stealing, for example, I would say, I noticed that this amount of money was missing, and I looked at this particular record. What do you think happened, or how do you think we should go about trying to resolve this? I would ask those type of questions in my store and have those conversations. It would always lead to great solutions. So my point is, dialogical coaching isn't just for instruction. You can use this in your daily life. You can use it as a parent. You'll see a lot of those things as we continue and move forward. So the relationship is equal. It's a lot of conversation going on there. Let's move forward. So in fact, effective instructional coaches are usually dialogical coaches. Therefore, this is the approach that is used through the impact cycle as provided by Jim Knight, the leader in instructional coaching, resources, presentations, conferences, etc. This is Jim Knight. I was exposed to him maybe my 6th year of teaching, and I started reading his books. I was just a teacher at the time, or not just a teacher, I was a teacher at that time and changing lives in the school because you all have that purpose and passion. But it wasn't until later when I became an instructional coach that I had an even deeper appreciation for his work because I was able to see things not just from my own private perspective as a teacher, but then seeing other classrooms. This lady right here, this picture with him, is Sherry St. Clair. Years ago when I worked in Carrollton, I absolutely loved everything that she had. It was just amazing there. Let me make sure I'm checking comments. I'm sorry. These are great from Dr. Ellis. I think we are actually at a place where we're utilizing all of these. That's awesome. We have a lot of varied levels of expertise, but also openness and willingness to coaching and feedback. Absolutely. And Ms. Pollard agreed to that. That is awesome. Shout out to Callaway Middle School as well there, also in the room. But with Sherry St. Clair, I met her and I said, she's wonderful. This is absolutely awesome. And she took me to coaching when we were in Carrollton and working with the district leaders. She took me through the coaching, me and our staff, and we really had a deep love for working together. Because I'm going to tell you, the first thing you have to do in instructional coaching is have some deep conversations and have real conversations, right? That's all in that culture. Sometimes you have to have hard conversations with people, but you have to get on the same playing field of culture. And that's kind of a trend. And I can see that being a conversation we may have in the coffee chat later on, because even with PLCs, we talked about you have to have strong culture. And I listened to a lady, Regina Stevens Owens, who once said, you have to have quality soil, right? You have to have some good, fertile soil to even receive anything. So those teachers have to have good soil. Those administrators, the district leaders, everyone has to have great soil so that when seeds are planted, they can grow. Okay. And that's going to be that key to success. I want to pause here for a moment and talk about some video reflection, because as we go on with our conversation, you're going to notice a lot of conversation geared toward video. And in my teaching career, I'll briefly talk about this. We use a lot of variety of video for reflection, instruction, and growth. I remember using my phone, and trying to like hold it at one time. I had a kid hold it in my beginning stages. Then I, set it across my desk and tried to like prop it up. Then I think like cell phone stands came out and I put that, to the side. I've had that tripod in the room. And it's so interesting because my last year officially teaching, I was out of my classroom over 50 days. And whew, right? 50 days is insane. But it was because I was out for professional learning conferences, things like that, or leading sessions and things. And I was like, what am I going to do as a teacher? What am I going to do? How are my kids going to learn? I found myself having to record. I had to kind of like I'm doing now virtually, like record. I would pretend, I'd be like, Johnny, sit down in that seat, even though I knew I couldn't see Johnny, but it just helped the video and it helped my classes. Sometimes I record 4 different videos for one day, just to make it relative. And then of course I didn't do that every single time, but I did a lot of videos. And in recording my classroom, I also recorded myself to see how I was teaching and also to look at my student engagement, because I'm a strong believer in looking at student engagement and really gauging that, because student engagement is one of the hardest things in education to really gauge and improve. And so with student engagement, you have to really pay attention to, are they really engaged? Or are they strategically compliant, right? Are they just smiling and nodding? Or are they really paying attention and engaging? You know that through your work, but you don't want to wait until a quiz or something. But with these videos here, use the cell phone, the tripod. I've used the swivel, right? That, was following you around the room, but then it's just, sometimes it's crazy. It doesn't, follow you. You're trying to follow it, but then I'm gonna be honest, I was clumsy. I literally tripped over a cord in the middle of a room, both as a teacher and an administrator. The administrator part was even more embarrassing because everyone laughed and spread over across the school because everybody knew me, right? And then also we used an owl that was great. Such a great point. As a teacher, I always focus too much on watching myself when the real key was student engagement. And that's right, Kelly. And that's actually a point that we're going to make a little bit on a couple slides here, because the one thing I love about dialogical coaching is that it's not geared at the teacher's strategies necessarily. You look at it from the student perspective, what is going to help them grow. And that also helps to relieve the teacher a little bit and help them be more willing to share, because it doesn't feel like an attack. That's the key with dialogical coaching in response to the other two methods. But anyway, I'm gonna move on, but I always tripped up and things of that nature. But my first year in a different district, my last district I was in, there was a school that was struggling at the time and we were having some issues. And the principal at the time, we were able to research and look for a way that was going to help us grow instructionally. She had been to a conference and she heard of this thing called Kloud-12. And with Kloud-12, she was like, you know what, research it. If you like it, buy it. If you don't, throw it away. I researched it, and what stood out to me about Kloud-12 was that they had a whole class view. Now, Kloud-12 calls it the quad view. My lingo is that whole class view because you have an image of every single thing, right? You can see the teacher, you can see the students, you literally have eyes in the back of your head. So for me, this was game changing. And we started off in the school with a small pilot, then it moved to a bigger deployment, and then it moved to the entire school, and now it's district-wide in that district, and that is amazing. And it started from just being able to look at these particular images and utilize it, not to spy on teachers, because that's not what they're for. This is about growth, right? And you want to be able for the teacher to see not just themselves, right? But be able to see the entire class view. And so with Kloud-12, it was that one-time setup, didn't have to worry about tripping over cords. It recorded automatically for my teachers. It was customizable with our recording schedule. It was that ceiling mounted camera, full classroom view available, and the files were recorded directly. They went straight to my Google Drive, right? Or OneDrive, whatever you have. But for us, it was that Google Drive and it worked wonders. And what I also loved about it is that the feature that it could download as an MP4, that was game changing because we also had what is known as Canvas, which was our learning management platform. So we were able then to download those videos and use that. This is very powerful and easy to use. Our teachers truly appreciate the fact that they have control over their own recordings. I love that, Jay. I absolutely love that. And it's wonderful because they then have that control over their own recordings, and that is truly amazing. I'm gonna keep moving through because I can't wait till we get to like open discussion in just a second. The impact cycle, I'm really excited because I really want to have dialogical conversations here. The impact cycle, as we're going to talk about now, the stages of the impact cycle are identify, learn, and improve. And this is that cycle that is here. So you're identifying, learning, and improving. And we're going to go through those stages really quickly here. So with the impact cycle, when you identify, these are the stage of that dialogical coaching, okay? So we know we have the other two coaching models that are great, but we're going to concentrate on the dialogical coaching method because we know that really works. And that follows the impact cycle, right? So when we identify, the teacher needs to get a clear picture of current reality by watching a video of their lesson or by reviewing observation data, right? You can get this from student work. You can actually get this from interviewing students. So you may walk into the room as a coach or a principal or whoever and say, hey, Johnny, what are you learning today in class? How is that going? How is the teacher teaching that to you? How have you learned that? What do you perceive to be your learning status right now? Those are things you can ask. That's a student interview. Those are powerful. You can use observation data, as I said, like you walking around actually observing teachers and giving critique and listening to them. You can also do student work, the actual work that they're producing is going to be great as well. But video is always best. And I like to use a combination, to be honest with you. Combination is really the best way, but video is that best method for capturing everything, right? And, silent little plug here for Kloud-12, that whole class video is going to really show everything that you have. Use recurring video options to help plan your action around improvement. So for example, if your goal is to improve teaching of citing textual evidence, you have different elements of textual evidence that you have, citing textual evidence. So it may be plot, right? You may be doing exposition, rising action, falling action, climax, all of that, the resolution. If those are different steps that you're looking at, or tone or theme or whatever, You want to make sure that you're strategic, in recording those daily lessons. You don't have to keep every lesson, but record those daily lessons so that you can pick different ones to look at. And when a moment happens in class that's really great, you can go back and find that. Or you can say, oh, this moment was awful, what went wrong, whatever, and go back and look at that. I'm gonna also suggest this. Don't look for a moment that was good or bad. Just randomly flow through your video and just hit stop. Look at a random portion of your instruction and see what was going on in that classroom. Look at the student engagement. Look at the learning that was going on, right? Look at the content that was being taught. How was the content being received? Also collaborate that with your exit tickets or a quiz or something that you have to see a combination there. And then the coach, because once you have a clear reality, it has to be clear what is really happening in this room. Then the coach is going to ask the teacher these identity questions with the teacher to identify a goal. Now, this is not a script. They are in order, okay? But do not feel like you have to ask each of these questions. Now, the first time that you, as an instructional coach, do the impact cycle and you work with the teacher for the first time, I would suggest using this kind of as a script to go through with the teacher. But as you move forward, because the cycle lasts a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, after you go through this cycle, you don't have to do this exact script every single time, but you want to use these questions as a guide. So it's a guideline, but not a script unless it's that very first time. So then we're going to get to those identity questions. Once we have a clear picture of reality, we've set up a strategic plan for recording. Now we're going to ask these questions. So I may ask the teacher, on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the best lesson you've ever taught and 1 being the worst, how would you rank that lesson? Right? So 10 is like better than the movies. It's top notch. 1 is the worst lesson. How would you, as a teacher, rank that lesson? Then you want to proceed to ask them, what pleased you about the lesson? What would you have to change to move this lesson closer to a 10? Notice the language that we're using here. We're not saying, I noticed that lesson was awful. What could you do to make it better? Never want to ask that type of question, right? This is dialogical coaching and we're making an impact. So we're trying to be strategic. So you say it in this way. What would you have to change to move this lesson to a 10? What would your class be doing differently if it was a 10, right? Starting to move into that content and student engagement. Tell me more about what that change would look like. How would we measure that change? Do you want that to be your goal? See, now you're the teacher's talking. They're the one providing this information. If you can hit that goal, would it really matter to you? Because you want to find something that is meaningful for the teacher. What teaching strategy can you use to hit that goal? What are your next steps, right? Those are those identity questions, and you want to really guide them to meeting that goal and then doing the next steps. And once you do that, then you identify a student focused goal. That is key. We're not identifying, oh, you're going to teach Socratic seminar and let me help you along the way. That's not what we're going to do. The teacher's going to identify a goal that's about student learning or student growth. It may be about behavior, right? I want to see, 80% of my students be engaged in my lesson. I want to see 90% of my students have an increase of X amount of points on this lesson. I want to make sure that my students understand how to properly cite textual evidence. Notice it's not about the teacher, because this is what opens the door for comfort, right? This is what opens that door. So you want to ask something that is geared toward the student, okay? And this has to be a goal that addresses that achievement, behavior, or attitude outcome. The next step in that impact cycle is going to be learn. So now the coach is going to share a checklist for the chosen teaching strategies. There's a book actually called the Check Fifth Manifesto. I can't think of the author now, but in that particular book, this author talks about the importance of checklists. Surgeons need checklists to start off. You think, no, they're not standing there in the surgery with a checklist beside them, but they've developed a checklist of what happens. And actually in his book, he talks about how a study showed that when people use these checklists, they saw 50% less deaths. That's powerful. They saw the team coming together and working more powerfully because a checklist, all it does is it sets you up to not miss steps that are going to cause failure. It's not a to-do list. It's not a, micromanaging tool. A checklist is just simply, hey, these are the steps that we need to succeed, and we want to be able to check them off so that we're very successful, right? The coach is going to prompt the teacher, right? The coach is going to prompt the teacher to modify the practice if the teacher wishes. Then the teacher chooses an approach to modeling that they would like to observe and identifies a time to watch modeling. Then you're going to provide modeling in one or more formats. And then the teacher has to set a time to implement that practice. So again, here, we're going to say, I want to see X amount of students be engaged. And I am going to be biased here and go back to Socratic Seminar a little bit. With Socratic Seminar or the Learning Circle, you have the entire class, or at least half of your class, engaged in conversation while the other half is evaluating, and then they switch roles, right? Or they may all just be talking, together strategically, having those conversations, and the teacher doesn't talk. They let the kids talk. So that's like one of the strongest methods or instructional strategies for student engagement. So if I want all my students to be engaged, we may say, hey, I noticed that your goal was XYZ. Have you ever considered using the Socratic Seminar method? And the teacher may say, no, I've never even heard of that. What is that? Or I've heard of it. I might want to give it a try. Okay, then we go with different steps, because it's not going to be me micromanaging and telling them exactly what they need to do. I'm going to give them guidelines, and then the teacher has to decide what they are going to do to follow it. And then they make a checklist of what they need to do to have this accomplished. And then I might model it for the teacher and have them watch that. They may do it, and I give observation and suggestions along the way until I do that actual observation. Because again, it's not judgmental, it's not evaluative, it's all formative. We're all just in this to grow and learn, going back to that quote by Peter Senge from the beginning. And then teachers set a time to implement this, okay? And then you improve. The teacher implements the practice, whatever strategy and things that they were going to use to meet the student-led goal or student-derived goal. The data is then gathered by the teacher or the coach in class or while watching video. I would suggest a combination on the student's progress toward that goal. And then data is also collected or gathered from those same methods on the teacher's implementation of the practice. Notice how I said first, it's about the student goal, right? That's still where we're gearing our attention, but we're also still strategically looking also at the implementation of this practice, because the way we implement it is going to also affect how the students respond to that and how they're engaged in that. And then the coach and teacher meet to confirm direction and monitor progress. The coach and teacher make adaptations and plan next actions until that goal is met, okay? Now with Kloud-12, using all of this, it supports this entire process, because with Kloud-12, you're able to create that recurring recording schedule. You can set it once and never miss a class in that. So the teachers can go ahead and set that automatically, get that out of the way. And I promise you, after about a few days or a week, teachers really forget that it's recording, and it takes away the nerves. Karen Bierman, a teacher at Callaway Middle School, she was one of the first people that piloted for me, and she's now Teacher of the Year at that school. And she told me she was nervous at first, but when she set that recording and forgot it, it kind of helped get over those nerves. And I've heard that work for other people as well. You can watch it back for self-reflection, right? Peer reflection and coaching dialogue. Capture lessons and use the recordings to create video libraries. So content, your model teaching, pedagogy, classroom management, all of that. You can create Google or OneDrive folders to easily manage your recording files. So now your Kloud-12 account is going to sync with that drive, and you can edit recording. So as a coach, I would always ask my teachers, don't send me a 50-minute lesson of your class. Crop it down, send me 5 minutes, send me 10 minutes. And I always like to see different stages of instruction. So I like to see like a beginning, a middle, and the end, or a different piece in there. Not the same thing every single time, so that we can really gauge what's happening in the classroom and really gauge how can we truthfully engage the students. Because even a lot of times students are fully engaged at the beginning, but they may not be at the end, or vice versa. what's going on there. So with the edit, I can trim our videos, I can clip them, cut sections, and if it was recorded in the quad view, I can extract it down to that single instructional view. So now, which I love this, and this is again back to why I bought Kloud-12 and why we loved it, not only am I able to now push out videos on Canvas, my learning management system, right? And I'm able to push it out on Canvas, do instructional views for the teachers, I mean, for other teachers and the parents and all that. I still have the entire quad view in my repertoire as well that I can use for things like RTI, response to intervention, or multi-tiered systems of support, right? I can use it for PBIS. A lot of people don't think about that, but I can use my Kloud-12 recordings for positive behavior interventions as well. So I can use it for a variety of things. I love that. I can share the recordings quickly and easily right from my account dashboard, and then also share the live view. And I think that's powerful as well. I don't like when administrators just automatically join in. You want to always have the teachers invite you in and invite coaches in at certain times so they know you're in there. And what it does is the teacher knows you're in there, but it doesn't distract from the students or anything. And I want to also suggest, because I didn't say this earlier, but as an instructional coach, it's also important for you to start from the beginning of the year, not even observing, but just going around the classes, getting familiar with students, making sure they know you, so that when you do come into rooms, it's non-distracting, it's not disturbing, okay? Checking the chat, making sure, okay. And succeeding, again, growth mindset is the key. You have to have a growth mindset, right? You have to believe that you can grow. Remember what I said earlier, you have to have good soil, okay? If you don't have good soil, seeds can't grow. So you have to make sure you cultivate the culture, cultivate that soil, so that those instructional coaching and that teaching and everything can just really grow. And it's the same thing with your students, right? You can't go in there and teach on day one. You have to cultivate culture. You have to set the ground for a positive year or a positive semester. As Paul just said, I love being able to use Kloud-12 to help with coaching cycles. Sometimes this is easier for teachers with so many observations taking place. So true. Shout out to Jennifer Bussey, yay, for taking advantage of this first in the ELA department. I love that. I love that. And I actually want to hear more about that in a second if you're able to, because we're about to have open discussion and dialogue. This is my last slide here. Listening and questioning effectively. So when you're doing this dialogical coaching, you have to be sure that the teacher and conversation partner does most of the talking, okay? So that teacher, that conversation partner, make sure they do the most of the talking. You need to pause and affirm before you start talking. So anytime someone talks, they say, man, I just don't think that was a good lesson. I'm not gonna continue talking and move on. I'm gonna say, I heard you say that you don't believe that you did a good job with your lesson, correct? They say, yeah. Okay, so why do you think that? So you want to always pause and affirm every single time. Don't interrupt, except when it's very helpful. So if it starts going in a negative road, you may say, hey, if I can interject here for a moment, let me suggest X, Y, Z. That's how you want to do that. Ask one question at a time. Don't ask a bunch of questions. Ask strategic questions and let the conversation, the dialogue, lead the questioning. Ask for clarification when you are not certain what is being said. Ask, and what else, right? It's always a what else. I have this in class. I would always say, why? No matter what answer they gave me in class as an English teacher, I was always like, why? Why do you think that? It was always something else I was digging for. So again, ask, and what else? Assume people are doing their best, right? We can't go into the assumption that teachers aren't trying to do well. We have to assume they're doing their best, and we have to be a support system for them. And then avoid giving advice disguised as a question. So don't do things like, yeah, you really should walk around your classroom more, don't you think? Don't do those type of things, right? So don't give advice disguised as a question. Be forefront. I would like to offer a suggestion. I suggest that you do such and such. Have you ever considered doing that? That's a different way of doing that, right? Be very strategic in everything that you're saying. So now I'm going to change my settings really quickly here. And I want to open the conversation. that is such a small but impactful way to change the word. Exactly, Kelly. It is a strong way of changing that wording. And I think wording is important. I used to always say too that a good question can work wonders, right? A good question can work wonders. And I want to actually make sure. Okay, good. I was making sure the setting was good. So you can come off the mics if you want to right now, and I offer the floor to conversation. What do you think? What are you thinking right now? That's the thing that I want to ask right now. What are your thoughts about instructional coaching? About this dialogical coaching right now in regards to your building or your district?
I think we're at a place where, like I said before, we have a lot of varied levels of not only expertise, but openness. And so even some of our most veteran teachers, and maybe more so than others, but they find it challenging, I guess, especially coming off the pandemic and then, not being as comfortable as they may have been with technology, even though they were forced into doing some type of virtual teaching. And so they're a little more hesitant just because they're not comfortable with it. But then also, I think that it's been a long time since they've had to view themselves teaching. So they had to do some reflective practices. So not only comfortable with the technology piece, but sharing their expertise with others.
Yes.
And then I think generational wise, we have a lot of new teachers and they are different than obviously our teachers that graduated or came into the field 10, 15, 20 years ago.
So true.
And so, they have different experiences, different expertise, and they're very comfortable with using platforms. But then some of those, what we may define as old school techniques, they haven't maybe been as exposed to those. So the camera system for us has been great because it's a non-threatening environment to where they can record, like, what do you think is a great lesson? Give me a snapshot or a snip that you think was a great lesson. And they're very comfortable with us not being, kind of that bird's eye view of overseeing what they're doing, but tell me what you think went well. And then training them or teaching them to also have reflective practices, but while viewing themselves.
Yes, I love that. I absolutely love that. And I think too, like you were saying earlier, you're at that place where you're going to be able to just, you're kind of in that mid road, like you said, you're not at the beginning, not at the end, but right there kind of, I mean, it never ends, but you know what I mean? Like at that further out place, you're right there at that working stage and just really getting people to share. And like you said, you're right. It's not even just, sharing your video even, is sharing that expertise, and this does it in a non-threatening way, and it really helps to open up that dialogical. I love that. Thank you for sharing. Someone else? Anyone else? Or just in general, what are some ways that you may see dialogical coaching being embedded? Or let me ask this actually. What are some next steps that you may see after seeing this presentation? Let me word it that way. After viewing this presentation, participating in this presentation, what would be your next steps in your school or district to move forward?
I think for us, again, we're right on the cusp of using peer reviews.
Okay.
And so peer-to-peer observations. But I think this is probably widespread everywhere, but finding coverage, finding, time for a sub to go in we can do that peer-to-peer observation and even feedback seamlessly and take out the scheduling aspect because of the system, Kloud-12 system we have. So I think that's where we are now, using each other as coaches, but still that non-threatening environment.
Yes. I love that. And that's the best coaching that you can have, is that peer-to-peer, right? Being able to have that peer-to-peer. And Kelly said this is such an excellent point. I love that. Miss Pollard, were you going to say something?
I actually agree with Dr. Ellis in regards to the peer-to-peer observations. That's something that we've really honed into this 9 weeks. And sometimes, you're on a time crunch, so teachers don't get to see everything. And I think that's been our main complaint, so to say. Well, we want to see where the rest of the lesson is going. You know, we only got to see the warm up or the opening. And
Yes.
with Kloud-12, you're able to provide that opportunity, you know, so that they get the full takeaway if they, you know, if they choose to.
Right.
Also, I was going to say with Kloud-12, you know, unfortunately, sometimes we have teachers, you know, who need a little more growth than others.
Yes.
So you might have teachers that are on informal plans and things of that nature. And because they already have so much on their plate,
Yes.
you going in there to constantly observe them to make sure they're doing well, you know, that puts stress on them, that puts pressure
Yes.
on them. So saying, hey, send me a video and this is what we're working on this week. So when you think you got it, send me a video of that. And, you know, we can do our coaching based off of that instead
Yes.
of it being so just in your face. So just, it's really a great tool, you know, and prayerfully everybody starts to embrace it because it's the way that we're going. So that's
That's
all.
awesome. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing, Ms. Pollard. And one thing that you just brought up too that I think was so powerful is that it's that culture. Like you said, like everyone's at different places. So you can't just go into every single person because a lot of times, and I didn't say this earlier, but some mistakes we make as coaches as we'll make a calendar, right? I loved calendars where we're like, I'm gonna hit this teacher, this teacher, this teacher, they need this, 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 this. But the reality is you have to be flexible, just like teachers with their standards, you have to be flexible with that. And I love that you brought that up because that really highlights the culture that you've established in your school. You've built that positive culture that, okay, everyone's at different stages, so I need to adapt and work with each one so that we're having that growth. And what you're going to see, if you haven't already started seeing that, is you're going to also see teachers that are going to become those master teachers, and their growth is going to be so phenomenal that it's just going to magnetize everyone else in that building. So I love that. Thank you for sharing. That's awesome.
Thank
And I
you.
love what you were saying about how you've started those peer observations and they're asking for more. Like how I think that is really cool because you're giving them a
Yes.
glimpse and then they're self-reflecting even and say, wait a second, I want to see more. And I think once you start building that culture of them wanting to see more of their peers, asking for that, man, that's when it really takes on its own life of its own, is when
Yes.
those teachers are advocating, hey, that opening, that was really good. I wanted to see what you did after that, because then they're searching for that own growth mechanism. So I love what you were saying about that.
Yes, absolutely. And thank you for sharing, Kelly, as well. Thank you. All right. Anyone else? Any additional comments anyone has to share? Anyone at all?
This has been incredible, Emmanuel. Again, I think that you're really hitting the nail on the head of really breaking down where we're at in that spectrum of that culture. I
Yes.
hadn't really thought about that and how there's different times and different approaches. So I think that that was super valuable, and I really took away a few. And I really liked your very concrete tips, especially again going back to that one: don't give advice and follow
Right.
it up with a question. That's such a tangible thing that I think we as teachers innately do. And just
Yes.
switching that, it was just, I mean, gosh, I just shifted my whole mindset away around that. I really liked how you framed that.
Thank you. Thank you. Any additional comments? Anyone? Okay. Well, I again thank you so much. Our entire team, again, there's Kelly, Caitlin, Jamie, Roxanne, myself, Emmanuel. If you ever want to reach any of us, we're always here to support. You can use our first name at Kloud-12.com. You can also send up a direct Calendly link. We'll be glad to meet with you virtually, meet with your staffs. We do traveling as well to go to your schools and really work with your instructional teams, work with your leadership teams, all of that. Thank you, Jay. Love it. Thank you so much. And thank you for being here. So I love this. And I also miss it. This is great. Are you able? Yes, I will share the presentation. I will definitely email that, and I will also post this as well. So I thank you so much. And thank everyone for being on here, and thank you for sharing. And thank you for just taking this time out of your day to participate in our coffee chats. Our next one is next month in about 2 more weeks. We're stepping into February. And we're going to go back to, we're going to redo the first part of professional learning communities. We're going to do part 1. And then we're going to step right into part 2 of that in that next one. So that's also on the flyer. And we'll be sending out information as well about our district leadership and school leader Facebook group that we are also working on as well. So thank you so much for your time, and I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.